To begin this conversation, we're very proud to be able to turn to a great friend and much admired colleague of our Committee on the Present Danger, China. His name is Roger Robinson. He has been deeply involved for decades in defending our freedoms against assorted enemies. Notably, he played a pivotal role in Ronald Reagan's National Security Council as its senior director of international economic affairs, in framing the strategy that Ronald Reagan pursued to take down that time's existential threat to freedom, the Soviet Union. Roger has been a chairman of the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission. He is these days the chairman of the Prague Security Studies Institute, which he founded in the Czech Republic. Roger Robinson, we are always pleased to have you with us, but particularly to sort of introduce the topic here of the financial warfare domain, whether it is in fact the Chinese Communist Party's greatest vulnerability and our greatest strength. Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Frank. It's a delight to be back before the committee and its audience. I'd like to, I think, begin by just a very quick review of the state of play vis-a-vis the role of U.S. investors in underwriting the Chinese Communist Party and its People's Liberation Army. Let's go back and take a quick look at the past, say, 25 years. We have allowed unchecked, unscreened, unmonitored, unsupervised some 5,000 Chinese companies to enter the United States capital markets, our stock and bond markets. This isn't even to discuss private equity for now. But in the actual stock and bond portfolios of somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to 100 million retail investors in our country, including most of the people that might be listening to this broadcast. Now, we're talking about the movement of trillions of dollars of funds under management that have moved from our hard-earned retirement accounts and investment accounts into the coffers of the Chinese Communist Party and the PLA. We shouldn't be wondering too much how they became a near competitor militarily, near peer competitor, as they are today. The threat, the existential threat that they represent today was largely, sadly, financed by us. Our capital markets are roughly the size of the rest of the world's combined. We have 66% of the world's investable capital. We are the dominant player by far in the global financial domain. That's just the way it is. And obviously, China, which doesn't even have a convertible currency, needs those dollars desperately. We have the world's reserve currency. So we have immense advantages. Have we ever exploited that leverage? No. Have we ever even prudently tried to protect American investors from a national security and human rights perspective? The answer is no. Have we even gone to look at the fiduciary risks when you have black box companies that have not engaged in material risk disclosure, have no corporate governance, and have none of the required means of ensuring that investors are protected, that average Americans are accustomed to with our companies and other foreign companies? There are no audits of Chinese companies. They've been let off the hook during the Obama and Biden years of having to do that from 2013 on. The list is a long one. The point is, this is the most horrific, undisciplined flow of funds from a democracy to a totalitarian police state in the history of the world. We're talking trillions of dollars now. So that's the order of magnitude. And who are these 5,000 companies? Well, you'd be not surprised to learn that they are equipping concentration camps helping, these are Chinese companies that are trafficking in slave labor. They're building the surveillance state. They're aiding and abetting genocide in Xinjiang. They built their last 2 aircraft carriers with help from Chinese companies on the New York Stock Exchange. You wonder how they are advancing in hypersonic glide vehicles. That too we've traced back to our funds. The advanced weapon systems of the PLA itself, which is a list way too long to go through in the course of this short presentation. But trust me, we're picking up those tabs. And it is, by my measure, the greatest financial scandal, arguably, in world history. And we're going to come to, we should already be coming to regret it. And we seem amazed by the fact that they have that unlimited checking account to buy countries, regions, continents, in the case of Africa, and the list goes on. Now, moving quickly, because time is tight, the House Select Committee on the CCP has done groundbreaking work, and Mike Gallagher deserves great credit as he departs government for this, but also the other members. It's been a bipartisan effort. They have taken this on squarely. They believe that it is a linchpin issue, if not the leading issue, in the U.S.-China portfolio, certainly the most underdeveloped and the most perilously neglected. They just put out, as just illustrative of their work, they just put out a report on BlackRock MSCI that's blood-curdling. I mean, it demonstrates that, again, BlackRock, which is the largest asset manager in the world, much less the United States, is financing something like 60 Chinese military industrial companies right now in its holdings. And sadly, those exchange-traded funds and mutual funds and the like are being pushed off to us. I mean, we're the ones that are providing the money. We just, in the Coalition for a Prosperous America, who I often work closely with, we put out a report in the next, it's been released, but it's not really been out there quite yet. It's going to be within this week to go through the offshore activities of BlackRock, and we find there that they are investing in Chinese companies offshore that are illegal for Americans to hold here. They're using Chinese indexes. Now, you have to be a little bit savvy on finance to get what that means, but it means they're using the list of Chinese companies provided by the CCP that's funneling our dollars right to their priority military industrial companies. The notion of using a Chinese index to invest American retail investor funds is in itself staggering. And the list is too long, as I said, to go through here. There is good news. There are 9 pieces of legislation that have been introduced in this session of Congress that the committee is going to be, I hope, distributing to whoever is interested in a summary, an executive brief summary of those 9 pieces of legislation and what they do. They are often bipartisan, which is a nice touch, to say the least. And they are trying to take on various categories of this abuse. I mean, American people are buying Chinese sovereign bonds, which is just discretionary cash directly into the coffers of the CCP. We're buying Chinese companies, or we're holding Chinese companies that are only traded on the mainland in Shenzhen, Shanghai, never seen the light of day in terms of material risk or SEC regulations. And yet there are 4,000 of them in our markets, in our portfolio. So again, it's a good thing that we're finally seeing a targeted approach to excising these abuses one by one. And I'm hoping that all of you will take a hard look at ways to support this kind of legislation, because Wall Street and its, quote, friends, as as Frank called them, none of which are better friends than Larry Fink of BlackRock, they've declared openly that if it's illegal, we're doing it. Sorry about those natty national security and human rights abuses, including genocide. And sorry that there's no investor protection and the thing is a complete black box. Too bad. It's legal. And therefore we're in. Okay, fine. Let's make it illegal right now. And to help us do that, and I'll start to close out here to stay within my 10-minute limit here. You got to love President Xi of China from one perspective, which is that he has a tin ear on the markets. He has helped us clarify beyond any kind of doubt exactly what the Chinese are up to. For example, as you might remember, he installed and forced the institution of Chinese Communist Party cells in every commercial entity of China, including their fraudulent private sector, of which there's none. They're all CCP controlled. Let's be clear about that. All of them have to have Communist Party cells. So you don't have to sit there and wonder, gee, scratch your head and say, gee, I wonder if they have an association with the Communist Party. It's right in front of your eyes. Now, catch this. They did something even better in terms of showing their true colors. And that's really what I'm getting to here. They've decided that it's a good idea to set up People's Armed Forces Departments. I'll repeat that. People's Armed Forces Departments now have to be established in the senior management structure of every Chinese commercial entity. Publicly traded or otherwise, doesn't matter. Private sector, you know, again, that fraud, all of those distinctions are gone. Every entity. Well, it seems to me that if you have a People's Armed Forces Department in your senior management structure, you have no place in the U.S. capital markets of the United States. You have no place for investment of private U.S. equity. This is the kind of thing that if you won't stop voluntarily, it's going to be made and must be made illegal. So we have every indicator here that we need. We looked at NASA procurement, for example, and we found that in terms of bad actor Chinese companies that should be nowhere near the procurement of our delicate and sensitive space program, half of the foreign companies were doing business with these very Chinese companies. And the list goes on. So again, the whole US government procurement has to stop when it not only comes to Chinese companies, to be sure, but those US and foreign companies doing business with them. That's where the rubber meets the road. And I'm afraid I've run out of time, but I urge you to take a look at this gargantuan topic, because if we get this right, we can almost get everything else wrong. And we are doing a lot of that self-destruction, as you all know right now. But if we get this right, trust me on this, it's about the money. It was in the takedown of the Soviet Union. It's going to be in the takedown of the Chinese Communist Party. We have the money. They don't. Let's get serious and deny it to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger Robinson. Words to live by. It has worked before. There's no question about it. We've seen your handiwork in it and your leadership in helping craft these various legislative items, as well as now helping to develop a consensus behind them, particularly a bipartisan consensus. Brad Sherman is co-sponsoring, I think, a number of these with Victoria Sparks, and it's a very, very promising development to have those two leaders in the House engaged in these very important pieces of legislation. So thank you, Roger, for joining us. And I know you've got to scoot, but delighted to have you with us always.